The clouds hang low over a forest that has no business existing in Roman memory as anything but a graveyard, because that's what it became. 3 legions, nearly 20,000 men, marched in, and almost none of them marched out. And the man who led them there wasn't an enemy general. He was one of Rome's own. Let's back up. By 9 AD, Rome believes Germania is basically theirs. Not conquered in the neat, garrisoned sense of Gaul or Hispania, but getting there. Roman roads are being planned. Roman taxes are being collected. Roman law is creeping into tribal territory east of the Rhine. The man in charge of finishing the job is Publius Quinctilius Varus, a governor with a solid political ursum and 0 real experience fighting in hostile forests. He's an administrator. He thinks the hard part, the war part, is already over. He's wrong. And the person who's about to prove it to him is someone he trusts completely. His name is Arminius, a young Germanic nobleman from the Cherusci tribe. And here's the twist that makes this whole story sting. Arminius isn't some wild outsider. He grew up partly in Rome. He served in the Roman army. He holds Roman citizenship. He's even been granted equestrian rank, real status, real trust. Varus treats him like a friend, maybe even a proc. Arminius sits at his table. Arminius advises him. There is a detail that makes Arminius even more of a paradox. He had a brother, known to the Romans as Flavus, a name that literally means the blonde, a sign of just how Roman he had become. And Flavus stayed loyal to Rome. The 2 brothers ended up on opposite sides of this divide, and years later, according to Roman accounts, they actually shouted at one another across a river, one defending the empire, the other defending the freedom of their homeland. 2 sons of the same Germanic father, pulled apart by the thing Rome was building on their land. And Arminius is playing the longest con in ancient history. Quietly, while wearing the mask of a loyal Roman ally, he's been stitching together an alliance of Germanic tribes that have spent generations fighting each other. That alone should tell you how much they hated what Rome was building on their land. Old rivals put down old grudges for this. Here's the setup. It's late summer 9 AD. Varus and his 3 legions, the 17th, 18th, and 19th, are stationed near the Rhine, doing what Roman armies do at the end of a campaign season, getting ready to head back to winter quarters. Comfortable, routine, predictable, then word arrives of an uprising. A local tribal revolt somewhere off in the frontier. And who brings Varus this news? Who urges him to take his legions on a detour to crush it? Arminius. Of course it's Arminius. Varus says yes. Why wouldn't he? His trusted advisor is practically drawing the map for him. So the column moves out, not on a paved Roman road built for marching in tight, disciplined formation, but into the wilds of what we now call the Teutoburg Forest. Thick trees, narrow paths, bogs underfoot, rain turning the ground into a mess of mud and roots. And this is the part that should make your stomach drop. It's not just soldiers on this march. Baggage trains, wagons, camp followers, families, non-combatants, the whole slow, sprawling tale of a Roman army on the move, stretched out over miles of forest track. A legion fights best shoulder to shoulder, shields locked, on open ground where discipline and formation win battles. Strip that away. Put them in a forest, strung out single file for miles, soaked and slowed by mud, and you've taken away almost every advantage Rome ever had. Arminius knew that. He'd served in the Roman army. He understood exactly how it fought, and exactly how to make it stop working. And then he leaves. Right before the trap closes, Arminius rides off, supposedly to go rally allied troops to help Varus. Instead, he rides straight to the warriors he spent years quietly organizing. What happens next unfolds over 3 brutal days. The first strikes come almost like harassment. Javelins out of the tree line, quick and vicious, then silence. The Romans don't even fully grasp yet what's happening. They think it's a raid, something to push through. They keep marching, because marching is what you do, because stopping in unfamiliar hostile terrain is worse. But it doesn't stop. It keeps happening, hour after hour, mile after mile. The column bleeds men into the trees. Roman engineers try to hack out fortifications when the army halts for the night, try to impose some kind of order onto the chaos, and by day, they push back into the same nightmare. The ancient historian Cassius Dio, writing about the disaster, describes a violent storm rolling in at the worst possible moment. Wind and driving rain that soaked the ground, snapped tree limbs, and sent the tops of trees crashing down onto the struggling column. The Romans' shields grew waterlogged and heavy. Their javelin throwers and archers were all but useless in the wet. The famous tortoise formation of interlocked shields was impossible to hold together on broken, root-tangled forest floor. Every technological and tactical edge Rome had spent centuries perfecting was, one by one, quietly canceled out by mud, rain, and trees. And the scale of it is hard to picture. A Roman army on the move like this, 3 legions plus the baggage and the trailing followers, could stretch for miles along a single narrow forest track, so strung out that the men at the front and the men at the very rear might as well have been fighting in 2 different battles, neither able to help the other. Then comes the wall. Along a stretch of the forest near a ridge called Calcrise, the Germanic tribes had built an earthen rampart, running alongside the narrow track the Romans were forced to funnel through, squeezed between the high ground and a marsh. Think about what that means tactically. The Romans aren't just being ambushed. They're being channeled, herded into a killing lane where they can't spread out, can't form a proper line, can't bring their numbers to bear. Warriors strike from behind that wall and vanish back into the trees before a countercharge can even form up. This is not a chaotic tribal skirmish. This is a plan, a meticulous, patient plan, built by a man who used Roman methods against Rome itself. By the 3rd day, what's left of the legions is barely an army anymore. Exhausted, starving, soaked to the bone, surrounded on ground they cannot escape. And Varus makes the choice that Roman commanders made when there was truly nothing left. He falls on his own sword. What follows is close to annihilation. Roman accounts describe the scale of it in the language of horror. Officers killed, soldiers killed, the eagle standards of the legions themselves, the sacred symbols of a legion's honor, seized by the enemy. Losing your eagle wasn't just a defeat. It was a wound to Rome's identity. When word reached Rome, the reaction was seismic. The historian Suetonius records that the Emperor Augustus, told of the disaster, was so shattered that he would bang his head against the door, crying out, "Quintili vare, legiones rede, Quinctilius Varus, give me back my legions." And here's the detail that tells you everything about how deep this wound went. Those 3 legion numbers, 17, 18, 19, were never used again. Rome simply retired them, as if erasing the number could soften the memory of what happened to the men who carried it. Rome did send armies back into Germania in the years after, under commanders like Germanicus, and they did fight their way back to that same forest, finding the scattered bones, the shattered weapons, the remains of a disaster frozen in place for years. The historian Tacitus, describing that grim return, records details that still chill. Human skulls nailed to the trunks of trees, whitened bones lying where men had fought back to back or scattered as they ran. And in the nearby groves, the crude altars where captured Roman officers had been sacrificed to Germanic gods. The soldiers of Germanicus buried the remains of their countrymen with their own hands, often unable to tell whether the bones they lifted belonged to a stranger or to their own kin. In those same campaigns, Rome did manage to recover 2 of the 3 lost eagle standards, small fragments of honor clawed back from total disgrace. As for Arminius, the architect of it all, his victory did not save him. The unity he had forged among the tribes soured once the common enemy pulled back, and his growing power bred fear and resentment among his own nobles. Within little more than a decade, he was murdered, not by a Roman blade, but by members of his own kin. Rome, for its part, had already taken a measure of revenge on his family. His wife, Thusnelda, was handed over to the Romans while pregnant, and later paraded through the streets of the capital in a triumphal procession, and the son she bore grew up a captive of the very empire his father had humbled. But the grand project, the plan to fully absorb Germania the way Gaul had been absorbed, that ambition died in this forest, along with the legions. The Rhine, not some line deep in German territory, became the long-term frontier, a boundary that would shape the map of Europe for centuries. And Arminius, the man who built this, became a legend among his own people, celebrated for generations as the one who broke Rome's momentum before it swallowed his homeland entirely. So here's the question worth sitting with. Rome had the better trained soldiers, the better equipment, the better tactics on open ground, centuries of conquests to prove it. And none of that mattered, because the man who beat them wasn't fighting them from the outside. He was the one they trusted to guide them in. 3 legions, gone, not because Rome was weak, but because Rome trusted the wrong friend, in the wrong forest, at exactly the wrong moment.